Hello everyone, Dan LaMarca here, and I am going to tell you about my 10 favorite games of 2019. I played a ton of games this year. No, like a shit ton of games. It's kind of scary actually. It's probably why this was by far the hardest year for me to make a personal top 10 list. My top 6 or so were pretty much locked, but I legitimately have 20 games that were in contention for the remaining 4 slots. After some serious contemplation about how much emotional investment in a game should factor into my personal top 10, I finally narrowed it down. Eliza, Sayonara Wild Hearts, A Short Hike, Card of Darkness, and Ape Out are all fantastic games that I had a great time with this year. I just couldn't find a spot for them on my list, and it hurts. It really hurts. I had to mention them here, otherwise I never would have made a real top 10 list. So there you go. Enough digression, let's get to the list. Number 10, Resident Evil 2. The original Resident Evil 2 is maybe like my 4th favorite Resident Evil game. So when I came to this horrifyingly beautiful remake, I didn't have super high expectations. I was blown away the minute I made it to the police station. These meticulously crafted rooms and corridors made for a gameplay experience that was a whole lot more than just the jump scares. This is a game that satisfied a particular level and gameplay design itch for me that few games do. Dead Space is the game that jumped out to me for comparisons here, and that is just about the highest compliment I can give a survival horror game. Oh, and I guess I should mention the ever-present stomping around of a certain bad motherfucker. Once you meet Mr. X for the first time, the tension never lets up. It can be exhausting, but in the best kind of way that only a game can provide. Play this game if you haven't already. Number 9, Apex Legends. I fell in love with Battle Royales after PUBG came out and set the world on fire a few years ago. I adored the way it felt like a horror game when you hear footsteps and freeze up, or when you walk into a carefully laid trap that somehow you made out alive by the skin of your teeth. Apex Legends has none of that. This is why it's so surprising to me when I fell in love with this game this year. The beauty of this game is in its gunplay. Titanfall 2. Play it. Its traversal mechanics that send you flying through the air, and its ingenuity in communication between teammates without ever using a headset. The thing that it does have, that PUBG also had, is those final moments when it's just your team and one or two others, and you get that surge of adrenaline. You know, it's either you or them, and there is no other style of game that provides this specific feeling for me. This is a supremely well-designed game that I'm so glad captured so many people's hearts in 2019. Number 8, Fire Emblem Three Houses. I would die for Edelgard. I would die for Bernadetta. I would die for Linhardt. I would die for Petra. That's the story of the game for me. You get to know all these students and their personalities. Slowly but surely you realize that this is your crew and you would do anything for them. The turn-based combat, still good. The A-plot, totally fine. But the characters that you grow and learn with are what keeps you coming back for 50 plus hours. Number 7, Slay the Spire. Slay the Spire is a game that I mostly played in 2018. I don't know if it's my OCD or need to follow ridiculous self-administered rules, but we do not put early access games up for contention while they are still in early access, until the year in which they are deemed to be version 1.0. This is silly. I also don't think we'll be changing that rule anytime soon, despite it being silly. So let me talk about the game that I love, Slay the Spire. Slay the Spire is the first deck-building roguelike dungeon crawler I played, and I played it for the majority of 2018. 2019 became a sea of this style of game. Griftlands is the only one of these that I played that even comes close to Slay the Spire in my opinion, and that game is going for something very different, but also very cool. Please check out Griftlands, it's really fucking good. The way that Slay the Spire makes you build your deck while climbing this tower of horrible monsters is both fun and challenging. First time I beat the final boss of this game was one of my most memorable triumphs in a game that I can recall because goddamn, it is tough. I don't have much else to say other than this is a really good game, and if any of this sounds good to you, give it a shot. Also, it's on Switch now, and I think it is a quintessential Switch game that really lends itself to being on the go. Number 6, Death Stranding. Death Stranding. I have feelings about Death Stranding. I can't and won't talk about all of my feelings on the game here. See our Game of the Year 2019 Part 2. But I will give you on the pitch of why I love it so much. The world building done in the first 2 hours of this game is fantastic. The team over at Kojima Productions really did an awesome job of creating a weird, scary, interesting world. If only they'd given the writing mantle to someone with some ability instead of their auteur. I can't even get through this paragraph that's supposed to be about how much I love this game without mentioning its pitfalls. That encapsulates this game perfectly. The beauty of a world full of people working together on weird public works projects to help each other get around easier is fantastic. Players that pop out of the black goo to throw you supplies when you're running low during a boss battle is great. The central themes, the world building, even the gameplay, I know a lot of people don't like it and find it boring. I loved it. If only Mama didn't have to keep grabbing her breasts and mentioning how it's painful when the milk comes in for her ghost child. It's a game of high highs and low lows, but it made me feel something throughout playing it, and I think it will be an experience that I continue to look back fondly on for years to come. Number 5, Baba Is You. Baba is you, but maybe Rock is you. Maybe Baba is Rock. The possibilities are endless. Well, not really endless, but definitely aplenty. What if the game scripting was personified in these interactable blocks in the level, and you could move them around to change the rules of the world? That's a pretty fucking cool pitch. Baba Is You is one of the smartest puzzle games I've ever played, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. It got incredibly hard at the end, and I think that will turn off a lot of people. My advice to those people that are getting stumped: go look up puzzles that you're stuck on, because this game goes places in the latter half. The simple yet beautiful art design is perfect for this game, and the music remains frustratingly joyous throughout. There are certain levels in this game that left me with a huge smile on my face, despite banging my head against it for hours, because it really is just that clever of a thing. You guys really owe it to yourselves to try it out. Also on Switch. Number 4, Control. I remember playing the first hour or two of Control, putting the controller down, and texting Dan and Shelby, quote, "This game is entirely my shit and you guys need to play it right now." Control is just fucking cool. The story of the oldest house, the multitude of documents about altered world events and objects of power, the font treatments, god damn, I love those font treatments flashing on screen whenever you enter a new area to see what's under those black redaction lines on all of this paperwork. The ashtray maze is an incredible gaming experience that I won't soon forget. The game is full of those kind of incredible moments of awe. Got it, A-W-D, sorry. And they all come together to make a great gaming experience, even if the A-plot is kind of muddy and silly. I love this game. Number 3, Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. I am not shy about my love of From Software games. The joy of playing a new one is almost unrivaled in media for me. New mechanics, new seams to tear at, new combat styles. Bloodborne was the first example of what this feels like, and Sekiro grabs the torch and runs with it. For me, Sekiro is a game that, much like any Souls game, is overblown in its discourse about difficulty. While I think this might be the hardest of the bunch, the real secret to these games is just patience and being able to learn their rules. Learning Sekiro's rules, and crucially, how it breaks those rules in order to surprise the player. The fucking Guardian Ape being the prime example, was a complete joy, and I thought for sure that this would be my game of the year while I was playing it, and even months after I was done, I was still thinking this was going to be my game of the year. The next 2 games came out of absolutely nowhere for me and threw a wrench into the whole thing. Number 2, Disco Elysium. I joked on a recent Game of the Year podcast that there will be a before Disco Elysium and a after Disco Elysium. I don't know if this is actually a joke or if I'm just afraid that other studios won't be able to reach the high watermark that is Disco Elysium for me. This is a game that takes a genre I adore, the terribly named CRPG, and twists it. The main reason most of us like that style of game is because of the storytelling and how it feels like a living, breathing D&D campaign. Disco Elysium takes that to its ultimate conclusion: no combat. Tons of dice rolls, both passive and active, but no combat. This allows the game to become what it wants to be, a gamified story in the truest sense. Almost a choose-your-own-adventure style game with tons of permutations and the writing chops to back it up. When this game truly succeeds, it's reveling in the rage that it has towards the world and everyone that makes it up. When the game stumbles, it's a drunken man who doesn't care who he's punching because he just wants to hit something. Even in its failures, it mostly has something interesting to say, and it kept me hanging on every dialogue option just to see what would happen. I adore this game and how it weaves all of its Lynchian dream logic with the all-too-real reality that we live in today. It's often cynical, but for me it ended on a very optimistic note. Also, I would give it all up to protect Kim Kitsuragi, and that is all. Number 1. Outer Wilds. Maybe not a surprising choice for anyone who listens to the podcast regularly, but like I said before, this was Sekiro's spot to lose, and I did not think a game I had barely heard of prior to its release would be taking it. Outer Wilds is a game about an extinct civilization and their futile attempts to stop the destruction of their universe. Sounds tired and overdone, but not this time. The Nomai civilization is personified in its characters that use this message board style of communication to talk to each other, either about very scientific, specific principles, or just to flirt sometimes. This is the crux of the game, and while it may sound like I'm headed towards the friends you made along the way narrative, I'm not. In a larger sense, the game is about how you spend your time knowing it's a finite resource. How do we grapple with the fact that we have such little control over the world around us? What is important after you're dead and gone? The way in which we live on in other people's minds and memories or stories passed down generations. This all sounds very melancholy, and it is, but it is also tinged with a sense of hope. The ending of this game made me think about life in a way that very few things in my life have. I've said all of this and haven't even mentioned the myriad of breathtaking moments. Like, when I say breathtaking, I mean literally like gasping at what's going on, either revelatory or just downright visually. Outer Wilds is not only my game of the year for 2019, it is also one of my favorite games of all time. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this personal top 10. Keep an eye on the podcast feed for Dan and Shelby's personal top 10s. We really enjoy doing these, so I hope you guys are enjoying them as well. Again, thank you, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Circle Back Podcast. Until then, peace.